My name is Jill Moore. I'm the Executive Director of Asia Wild. Thank you all for joining us. Asia Wild are a U.S. 501c3 nonprofit. Our mission is to rescue and protect Asian animals worldwide. And we accomplish that by pooling donations from our generous community of donors and using those funds to make targeted grants to local international organizations, grants that have a direct impact on the animals that are in crisis. In 2023, we distributed $1.7 million in grants to 15 incredible nonprofit organizations around the world. This month, in honor of World Bear Day, we wanted to focus on our bear grantees, Borneo Orangutan Survival, and Free the Bears. We will start by interviewing representatives from BOS. Then I'll introduce the folks from Free the Bears, and at the end, we'll have a Q&A session with everyone on the panel. Our guest speakers from BOS, Ben Callison, the CEO of BOS USA, and Diawati, the Sun Bear coordinator from BOS Foundation, joining us from Indonesia, where it's very early in the morning. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us.
I want to give a huge thank you to you, Jill, and Asia Wild for everything that you guys are doing for the entire for all of Asia with all the BOS. So BOS was founded back in 1991 as a response to the habitat, well, the many threats facing orangutans at the time. That's Borneo Orangutan Survival. And it's really because Indonesia is the same as many other countries where they saw an economic driver, and they've been seeing that since the 1980s. That's really when they started. We just did it decades and centuries ago, and that forced them into doing a lot of agricultural work that has seen habitat loss across the entire country, and that habitat loss, as it does for so many species around the world, drives down populations of wild animals, and orangutans were declining at a very fast rate. But also, as we started working with orangutans, they live in the same rainforests as our beautiful little sun bears, and there's a little sun bear right there. He's hiding behind me. They are shy. You'd hardly ever see one in the wild, so that is probably correct. But yeah, we started to accept sun bears as well because they were affected very much like the orangutans, and so over the decades we've built up, sadly, to almost 80 sun bears living with us that have been displaced and needed a home, and so they live with us at the sanctuary along with the orangutans.
I definitely want to introduce Dewey. Curious about what your background is and how you first became involved.
After I graduated, I'm joined also with another NGO before BOS and focus on Java Salwaris at that time. And then, but that time I support like raising awareness of conservation in the community and local community, and to make them working us together to protect Javan Salwaris habitat. This foundation is like quite popular in Indonesia for conservation, and like I want to be part of BOS, and especially for contribute to conservation wildlife. And then I have an opportunity to join with BOS, and now I've been a Sun Bear coordinator for 3.5 years.
Talking about the grant that Asia Wild provided to BOS, and wanting to know, what the background was of the bears that our funding was supporting, where they came from, and what their life is like now.
The background of the sun bear, actually, we already have 75 sun bear under our care, and for Asia World, we happy that they support us for 16 bear, which is the elderly. Both of them actually has a problem also with the health, like they have a problem with the cataracts. And then they need the support for like supplement and vitamin for joint. But before that, we cannot afford for vitamin. We just like do our best to give for them, but yeah, they need like we cannot provide everything. But with the grant, yeah, it's very helpful.
Last thing I wanted to ask before we wrap it up and talking about boss and move on and introduce Free the Bears is how do you feel that Asia Wild's grant has impacted your work and the animals that you all are working to protect?
One of the big things is, look, we're Borneo Orangutan survival, and very few people know about our sun bear work. With as many sun bears as we have, it is a large portion of our work. And that team, I've been to Indonesia, I've been to the sanctuary, I've seen them work tirelessly day in, day out through COVID, which was an unbelievable challenge for this team, for all of them to be able to try to help these bears through that time, and of course the orangutans, and living on site and having to put all the PPE on in the sweltering heat. So, but because the orangutans so often get the attention, I think this has been not only valuable for other funders to see an organization step up in such a big way and fund our sun bear work in such a meaningful way, but it's also wonderful to have our team there who work day in, day out, to have that focus and that support of them, and put them in the limelight. That's why we wanted Dewi here. I mean, that's something I think is also just has been so valuable to see that focus on it, because so seldom do we ever see anyone come in for the bears, and they're such an incredible species that they deserve equal amount of support as the orangutans, because they live together. I mean, we've got the orangutans in the treetops that are kind of the gardeners of the treetops, but then you've got these incredible sun bears, which are gardeners of the rainforest floor, and together they make such an important part of the ecosystem. So that's why I think it's been so valuable. And like everything, once you start to get the support, we can talk to other supporters about, look, this is what Asia Wild's doing. Would you like to join and help and fund our sun bear work? So again, a huge thank you to Asia Wild for your support. It really means the world to all of us and to the team there.
So thank you for joining. Don't go away. I know that we've got some questions coming in, and I definitely want to be able to have you and Brian from Free the Bears. Free the Bears is located in Laos, and the CEO, Matt Hunt, is our guest.
Hi there. My name's Matt Hunt, and I'm the CEO of Free the Bears, one of Asia Wild's latest partner organisations. We've been very fortunate to receive a much needed grant this year to help us with construction of our newest bear house and forest enclosures at our Luang Prabang Wildlife Sanctuary in Laos. Free the Bears was originally formed by Mary Hutton, who's a British grandmother who moved to Australia in the 1970s. And then in 1993, she became aware of the plight of bears being held in bear bar farms in China. In 1995, she registered Free the Bears as a charity. And since that time, for the last almost 30 years now, we've been working to help bears across Southeast Asia and South Asia, helping rescue almost 1,000 bears. I first heard about Free the Bears when I was working in the UK. It wasn't until early 2001 when I was travelling around. I went to Perth in Western Australia and was fortunate to secure a job at the Perth Zoo. And a few years later, and I gave Mary a call to give her an update on how the bears were doing. And I think I put the phone down an hour later, having committed to save up all of my salary for the next 6 months and come and volunteer with Free the Bears in Cambodia. So that's actually how I got started. This part of the world, living in Southeast Asia for over 23 years now. And during that time, I've actually lived in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, all the 3 countries where we currently operate. Right now, I'm talking to you from our sanctuary in Laos, where we first started working in 2003 with 3 bears being rescued and a request coming from the local forestry office for Frida Bears to step in and lend a hand. So originally we started in 2003 building a sanctuary at the Tak Kwang Sea waterfall outside of Luang Prabang. And that site was a beautiful natural location in thick, beautiful forest. But unfortunately, because it's also a very popular tourist attraction, the waterfall, we knew that we wouldn't be able to expand beyond 25 bears there. So between 2003 and 2015, the number of bears kept going up and up. As of August 2015, we went over capacity at that site, so we really had to ramp up our efforts to look for some new land to build a second sanctuary in Laos, which we located in 2016, and on the 1st of January 2017 we were handed the keys to 25 hectares of land, about 8 kilometers as the crow flies from our original sanctuaries, still within Luang Prabang province. And this new sanctuary we've been building for more than 7 years now, and it's called the Luang Prabang Wildlife Sanctuary. Now, in the time that we've had this new land, the number of rescues in Laos has gone up exponentially. I think we rescued more bears in 3 years after we got this land than we had in the first 12 years of us working in Laos. We've been averaging around 12 bears rescued a year, and currently today we have more than 110 bears in our care between the 2 sites in Laos. So the situation we have here in Laos is that Laos still has quite a good percentage of forest cover, and so it is believed to be potentially quite a stronghold in the region for wild sun bear and moon bear populations. However, there is quite a rampant trade going on, which has been evolving over the last couple of decades. We're now seeing an awful lot of online trade, and also since around the turn of the millennium, the first bear bar farm opened up in Laos. We're very thankful that the industry hasn't been able to run out of control as it has in other places such as Vietnam or China. The highest number of bears known in bear bar farms has been around 120 animals about 10 years ago, and we've been working stringently with the Lao government for the last 15 years, really trying to get these bear bar farms closed and get the law applied properly. Unfortunately, as is often the case, there's loopholes in the law, and the enforcement is not at the kind of level that we would like to see currently. But like I just mentioned, we have seen a huge increase in the amount of enforcement and the amount of bear rescues happening over the last few years since we started building the new sanctuary. And we're seeing more and more international pressure being placed on Laos to address the bear bar farms, as well as some other issues that they have, such as tiger farms and even macaque farming for laboratories. So as is the case with many places in Southeast Asia, you have these industries emerging, taking advantage of wild populations being available through hunting and weak law enforcement, and so we really see our role here to work with the government always and make sure that they have the facilities available, so that whenever law enforcement happens or whenever we hear of cases of bears in need of rescue, we can apply pressure, they can do the rescues, and they know that they have a good place to bring the animals to for lifelong care. Because of course Laos is one of the poorest countries in Southeast Asia. They're dealing with high levels of illiteracy, high levels of child mortality. So wildlife protection really is quite low down on a budget that really is very stretched anyway. What we've really found in the last few years, as we've been building the Luang Prabang Wildlife Sanctuary, the number of rescues is going up all of the time, and of course that's great in terms of providing a happy outcome for the animals that are being rescued. But each bear that comes into our care, will require up to 40 years of care. Like, I think about 60 or 70% of the animals being rescued in Laos are cubs, and currently we have no rehabilitation program in place. We have no areas of forest identified yet. It's something we absolutely want to be working on soon. But right now the hunting pressure is still very high, and so for most of the animals coming into our care, they're going to require lifelong care in the sanctuary, and that's obviously a huge commitment. So getting this grant from Asia Wild really has been a massive boost to us. We've currently got in excess of 20 young bears that have come through. You know, many of them arriving just a few kilos in weight and going from our cub nursery into the stage 2 cub nursery, and then up to house 4, which is where we tend to sort of take the cubs when they're all about a year old and start forming them into social groups. But they need to move out from there. They need to get into proper bear houses and get into somewhere where they can stay long term, and that's what the grant from Asia Wild is really such a huge boost to us, because this is going to allow us to build a brand new 6-den bear house, which will be capable of housing up to 12 adult bears. They're going to all be moon bears, these guys, and 2 forest enclosures covering 5,000 or 6,000 square meters. So a huge, lovely area of natural space for the bears to live out and continue growing up. Basically, right now they're like teenagers. They're all sort of approaching three years old, and yeah, we basically obviously need to break them into single-sex groups so that we don't have any unwanted pregnancies. You know, something you always want to avoid with teenagers, and get them well established so that they can live out the rest of their time here with us in good welfare state. Right now, the construction work is underway on the new bear house, and we're very, very hopeful that it will all be finished by June or thereabouts, and we'll be able to get some of the bears moved up and into their new home straight away. This obviously has a knock-on effect, you know, as we take the 3-year-olds out of bear house 4 and move them up to the new bear house. That gives us space for the animals that are currently too big and in the stage 2 cub nursery to move up to bear house 4, and the animals that are currently in the nursery to move through, which frees up space for new rescues. Right now, you know, we tend to have about 12 rescues a year. It's been, you know, up to 18 is the most. We had just before COVID in 2019, we had 18 bears rescued in Laos in 1 year. And we're seeing huge amounts of online trading cubs happening on social media this year. So we need to get the animals moved through and into new permanent housing, and also free up space in the cub nursery so that we're ready for when those next rescues happen, which frankly could be any day now. So always, it does tend to feel like we always have our back up against the wall. The animals are coming in quicker than we can build, but obviously, you know, the alternative is that there isn't anywhere for the government to take them, and then no enforcement happens, and then the trade will just obviously get worse and worse and worse. So it's up to us to make sure that whenever the government needs to have help with a bear rescue or needs to place a bear that they've seized from traders, that we have somewhere. We never turn bears away. We never say no, and yeah, that's what's been keeping us going for 20 plus years in Laos, and that's hopefully going to continue for as long as it takes to get these bar farms closed and end the illegal trade. Thanks ever so much for your time, and once again, thank you to everybody for supporting Asia Wild, which has allowed them to give us this wonderful grant and make a huge impact on the lives of rescued bears here in Laos. So thanks ever so much. Bye for now.
Everybody, let me introduce Brian Krudge, the Regional Director for Free the Bear. Where exactly are you located right now, Brian? Where are you calling in from?
I'm in Laos, also in Laos.
You're in Laos as well. So it's it's 7 o'clock in the morning for you. Thank you so much for making the time and joining us. Really appreciate it. That was amazing background. I knew a lot about Free the Bears when we went through the grant application and review process, but Matt provided so much more detail and some very unusual, timely things, considering some of the things that you've been busy doing this past week.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Yeah, so I'm Regional Director of Free the Bears. I oversee the programs in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. These are the sanctuaries. We've got sanctuaries in each of these countries, and we also have outreach programs and research programs.
We're funding Bear House 8 construction. How far along are you, and what is the background of the animals that will be living in there?
Sure. So the grant specifically is for Bear House 8 at Luang Prabang Wildlife Sanctuary. So we've got 2 sanctuaries here in Luang Prabang. Luang Prabang Wildlife Sanctuary is the new one. We've been building continuously to try and keep up with rescues. And as Matt says, try to ensure that there's always space available there. Rescued 18 more bear cubs, all Asiatic black bear cubs. So one group was a group of 16 bear cubs from Vientiane, one location in Vientiane. We believe this is the single largest rescue of endangered bear cubs ever in the world in history.
It's incredible.
And then as soon as the bears arrived, it took a couple of days to secure the bears and get them up to the sanctuary. It's about maybe an 8-hour drive from Vientiane up to Luang Prabang, and the team had to stop along the way because some of the bears are quite small. And 1.3 kilograms was the smallest one, so we've got to stop along the way and make sure they're fed and comfortable. I've got to pay credit to the team. You know, it's not an easy task to take in this number of bears, and especially very small bears that need bottle feeding around the clock. And they've done a great job. They've taken it in their stride and haven't complained.
And
very dedicated.
they were these bears, these 16 bears were rescued from were confiscated by the government from a trafficking ring. Was that correct?
Yeah, so it seems that these bears were confiscated by the environmental police in Vientiane, the capital of Laos, and it seems like the person who had them was, as Matt said, we were seeing a lot of bear cubs being traded or being advertised, at least on Facebook, recently, and it seems that this person was buying up these bear cubs for whatever reason. It could be that he wanted to sell them on, possibly to bear farms in Laos, could be, or abroad in China, for example, or it could be that he wanted to set up his own bear farm, a new bear farm. So we've been very proactive in Laos, making sure that there's always sanctuary space to rescue bears, so that these bear cubs, any bear cubs that are seen, can be confiscated and brought into the sanctuary, because the alternative is that they end up in bear farms. As Matt said, at the height in Laos, I should say this isn't the total number of bears in farms in the world. The total number is tens of thousands of bears in farms. But in Laos, the maximum number was, I think, 120 bears, and in part through our effort, through the government's effort to confiscate bears, any bears that they encounter, the number of bears in farms has declined, and there haven't been any new bear farms opening up.
So they're going to be in your care for the rest of their lives, upwards of 40 years, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So we are working on a release program where it's complicated. You know, the threats are ongoing to wild bears. One of the issues with releasing bears is they become habituated to humans, especially when they come in as cubs and they've got to be bottle fed. Then they get used to humans, which becomes a problem when they're adults. And if you try to release them to the wild, then they're used to humans for food. The 18 cubs that we've got right now are unlikely to be released, which means that we will provide care to them for life, up to 40 years. This is specialist diets, veterinary care, health checks every couple of years, just to keep an eye on their health, and then treat any other issues that come up along the way.
Yes, we need rescue funds. We need people to step up at the time of rescue or in advance, so that the funds are ready to go when a rescue like this situation comes up and you had like 24, 48 hours notice to move into action, I think. But there's also the long-term care, the ongoing support, and making sure that they have the best medical care, the best facilities that replicate their native environment, their natural habitat as best as possible, so that they have a good quality of life. And sometimes that gets overshadowed by the urgency of rescues, but the ongoing care is really desperately needed and important. And a few more things that I wanted to touch base. We did have some of our attendees that asked questions. You've talked in detail, Brian, about the bear bile industry. Ben and Katie, is the bear bile industry a big factor in the bears that are coming into your custody? Is that where they're coming from, or are there other threats and crises that in Indonesia that are affecting them?
I mean, the bears that have come to us are much like the orangutans, are displaced, and there is the wildlife trafficking trade, which is alive and well around the world, including Indonesia. So we do fear that the sun bears, just like the moon bears, are getting taken for potentially that disgusting industry. Most of what we see though in Indonesia is just habitat loss, is what was driving the income of sun bears into our center, is exactly that habitat loss. It is a critical moment that you want to rescue them before they do find it into one of these horrendous places, because I mean, this is a small cage. This animal does not hardly move. Those poor sun bears there, because they're being harvested for this bile. It is a horrific, horrible life that they're stuck in for potentially, as they used to talk about, 40 years of sanctuary care. You're talking 40 years of harvesting if they survive that long. The process to remove that bile is very dangerous, and many don't even make that process after a few times. But anyway, yeah, so we do see we do fear that's part of the wildlife trafficking trade. That's why we are very actively against the wildlife trafficking of all wild species. But like I said, mostly in Indonesia, we're seeing more of an issue with the habitat loss, and that's driving the sun bears like the orangutans into sanctuary.
Do we know how many bears are in captivity? That was one of the questions that one of our attendees asked during their registration process.
I'd say the bulk of bears that are in captivity are in Asia, are in wild farms in China. Okay. I think the minimum estimate is 10,000. This is in legal bear wild farms. In Vietnam, where Free the Bears also works, they have bear bile farms, and at the height of bear bile farming, there was 4,300 or 4,600 bears in farms. This was 20 years ago. And that number has dropped now to about 250 or 300. About 300 of those bears of those 4,000 bears made it into sanctuaries. The rest have just died off from the situations that they were living in. We did research back in 2016, 2018, interviewing bear bile farmers, and they said that the demand for farmed bear bile had dropped off, so people weren't buying bear bile from the farm, and then the farmer said it wasn't worth keeping the bears, so a lot of those bears they were left to starve and die in those farms before they could be rescued. This is why it's so vital to have sanctuary space available beforehand for these bears, so that the government can actually do some law enforcement and go out and confiscate where they can, which can be challenging as well. There's other
and it's amazing what you all are doing in protecting them from ever going into that industry, and then getting them out of that industry. And we cannot thank you enough for the amazing work that you're doing. I would like to share just about a minute's worth of a video from Free the Bears of this amazing bear cub rescue.
I'm hungry already. You hungry already? Okay.
I mean, that is as good as 84.
Perfect.
Because my mic takes it up from the front.
We can weigh her quickly as well as Jess. 1 3.5, 1 2.5, or 1 3.5. As we wrap things up this evening, I just want to take a moment to thank our guest speakers from Boss and Free the Bears and all of our attendees for attending tonight's discussion. Apologies for all of our technical difficulties. I appreciate your patience with us. I hope that you will all join us next month as we launch into our April Wild Talks featuring Global Sanctuary for Elephants. To receive updates and registration information for Wild Talks, visit us at asiawild.org/events. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.